Do you still want to go? Where's your own north? It's a matter of perspective, yeah? Half empty, half full. We're still at the platform, and our next speaker is Professor Ndubisi Ekekwe. Dr. Ekekwe is the founder and the president of the Africa Institute of Technology, a tech company that facilitates the provision of practical educational policies to support creative technology emanating from African countries. An inventor with a patent in medical robotics and an author notably known for being the recipient of the IGI Global 2010 Book of the Year Award in nanotechnology, microelectronics, global diffusion, economics, and policy. Dr. Ekekwe has also held professorships in electrical and computer engineering at Babcock University and Carnegie Mellon University. He is a TED Fellow, and he is an IBM Global Entrepreneur and the World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. Let me confess, I'm an avid follower on LinkedIn. Anyone who reads what he writes on LinkedIn just feels like, people have sense in this world. And it's an honor to have you here at the platform. Let's welcome joyfully, for the very first time to the platform, Professor Ndubisi Ekekwe.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's quite a great privilege for me to have this opportunity of speaking before you in this capacity. I want to begin by thanking Pastor Poju for bringing me to the platform. This is Lagos. It's a very beautiful city. I'll be having a conversation today on a topic I have titled, The Growth of Nations. Of course, I will be extrapolating from that classic Adam Smith wrote many years ago, The Wealth of Nations, where he postulated the dynamics, formulation, constructs and models and processes and systems which are very critical for the development and growth of nations. And I will do it. So let's start. Okay. Yeah. So I will begin with a slide. And if you look at that slide, you will see 2,000 years of GDP. And if you check very clearly, about 500 years ago, the gross world product was flat. In other words, generations of people that lived apart did not experience any major change. So if you check that, you see that about 500 years, the GDPs of nations were actually flat. And the implication of that is that over time, generations of people that lived apart, they did not experience any major change in their living standards. I've used United States GDP here and also use China because they are the most dominant economies today. But the same thing applies to other GDPs across the globe. But as those GDPs were flat, there was something so fanciful. The people that lived therein were very brilliant people. In some of the most fundamental constructs in physics and chemistry were actually created by the people that lived therein. But they were poor. They were poor because of one thing: they lived in an inventive society. An inventive society is a society where there are ideas, but there are no products and services. But as you now move a little bit further, you begin to see that the GDPs of nations started ramping up. But not every part of the world benefited from that. What was happening that some parts of the world was moving from being an inventive society into an innovation society. Because an innovation society is a society that offers goods and services, whereas inventive societies are just about talking, postulation, constructs without taking action. Unfortunately, Nigeria is still an inventive society. Nigeria is still an inventive society because if you go around beer parlors, restaurants, and if you go to motor parks, people have already decided what the solutions will be for our power problem, for our water problem, for our transportation problem. But come on. Wake up in the morning, go to sleep, come back next week, those problems are still there. But we have already figured out. Okay. So, nothing has happened because it's all about ideas. In this conversation today, I will do a translation how our beautiful nation can move from becoming an inventive society to an innovation society. Because inventive societies are just nothing but ideas and talking, while innovation society is where you have products and service. And because when you have the products and service, that is actually how growth happens. Just like you saw there that America started seeing the ramping of their GDP, China started seeing the ramping of their GDPs, while other parts of the world saw largely a flat GDP. Of course, you know the implication that over generations of people, if the GDP remains flat, even when population was increasing, it means that per capita income of the citizens was actually decelerating. And when that happens, it means that the well-being of the citizens was actually dropping. Of course, there were empires and kingdoms. There were the Obadoms, there were the Obidoms, there were Emidoms. But man remained poor. How can Nigeria become that society of innovation? Innovation is equals to invention plus commercialization. If you have not commercialized it, it's not innovative because markets have not validated the hypothesis upon which you have designed it. And it's also very critical that we have to ask ourselves this question: how do we do that redesign? And I'll begin by saying education. Education is a key driver we need to transition from that inventive society to an innovation society. And I'll tell you something. The Bible said that when Moses appeared before the Israelites, that they marveled because he has studied under the Pharaohs. Egypt had the best educational system in the time of Moses. And Egypt dominated and ruled the world because there is this correlation that the wealth of nation is always correlated with their capacity to create knowledge and apply knowledge. The best astrologers live with Pharaoh. The best thinkers live with Pharaoh. And Moses studied with them. And he was well qualified for the mission he has been sent. It has always been like that. I remember the time you read about the Babylonians, you read about the Roman Empire, you read about the Greeks. In short, if you go back to the material component of the universe device, it was a Greek conversation. Heraclitus, Thales, Pythagoras, they were discussing constructs and models about the construct of the universe. And there was also something happening. As they were doing those things, they built some of the finest shipping lines in Europe. If you land at Athens, you see the road to the Thessaloniki. You can now see the one going to the coast Ireland. And from there, you can see the Mediterranean Sea. You see the old shipping lines that they built. Acquiring knowledge, applying knowledge. They remain the instruments that build capabilities for nations. The best of America today is not because they build the best bombs. The greatness of America today is that they have the best educational system in the university level. And with that university level education, they can renew the American economy. They can retool the American economy. No matter what the world throws at America, the university system will inject new ideas to help that country out of any paralysis. I have never seen a nation that develops faster than its educational system. It is an optical illusion. I studied physics in secondary school to think that you can become a great nation without a solid educational system. I knew the day I finished from Futo. I went to the Johns Hopkins University for my PhD. The professor told me in WBC, you'll be going to work on building robots that can operate on human beings. I just look at him. What are you talking about, man? He said, don't worry, we have assessed your capability. You have the ability to do this. You are going to go through a process, and after that process, you accumulate capabilities. And at the time you accumulate capabilities, you have a contribution in our field. Ladies and gentlemen, I actually invented technology. The United States government later acquired the rights to that technology. Medical device companies actually came and acquired the rights to the technology. But that was a little guy from the village who did not even know how to begin. But America has figured out a system that through the educational system, they will give you capabilities for you to rise. And that is how nations are built. Our problem is that we see the amalgam of opportunities, but we do not have the capabilities to tackle them. Until we have an educational system that gives us the capacities as a people, that when we see those problems, we have the capacities to go and attack them. There are market frictions, and market frictions can only be solved with products and services. Because the essence of farms is nothing to solve market frictions. And when you solve the market frictions, the system pays you through revenue. But how do you solve frictions when you don't have capabilities? And how can you have capabilities when you don't have ability to learn? And when you don't have institutions that can impart new knowledge to you? And that is the reason why, for us to move from that inventive society to an innovation society, Nigeria has to think about the educational system. But it's not going to come from government. I don't even expect the government can do much, because if we have a budget of $30 billion, you take out the payment of federal workers and pension, you take out what we use to service our debt, we don't even have enough money for education. My proposition is that we have to go back to our tax code. Do it the way they do it in America. If I make a donation to a university from my company, can I take it as what they call tax deductible instead of an expense? If you make it tax deductible, I will now be stimulated to give more to the university so that I don't have to pay a lot of tax to government. But there is a multiplier effect by giving to the university, because a $1 million given to FUTO, my alma mater, can actually quadruple over 5 years, because they will use that money to train students, they use that money to research and things that matter, and they will prepare these students to become the leaders of the 21st century. Sure, government may not have that money immediately, but if government is a little patient, the value that will be created will be awesome. I believe that Nigeria has to figure out a way through efficient tax policy how we can bring $10 billion in the educational system every year. Because that is what we need to drive at parity. And as we are fixing the educational system, we also have to look at property rights. If you look at that curve I showed you, no nation has gotten to the mountaintop without fixing the property rights. You know, there was a time all those inventors, many years ago, they had some of those constructs of physics, some of those constructs of mathematics and chemistry. But many of them were poor because people were not confident of giving them money to commercialize their inventions. Why would you give somebody money to commercialize something when your neighbor can rip up the same thing the next morning and start making them products? That doesn't work. In 1790, America started their patent system, and Samuel Hopkins received the first patent system. If you look at that curve, that was actually when their economy took off. And the other parts of the world started mimicking them, because they realized that property rights is a very important element in the accumulation of wealth and accumulation of capabilities in nation, because there is this natural greed that if I become the first person that can figure out a problem, and if the government can give me exclusivity or one kind of protection, there will now be more incentive for me to do more. Why will I spend $1 million to create something, and the next morning everyone has access to it? I am not Father Christmas. I'm an Igbo man, people. And that is the way it is, people. That is the way it is. Because if you look critically, Nigeria is a country where a man that has 1,000 goats is still considered to be a poor man, because government doesn't have record about him. And somebody that has 5,000 acres of land, government will still see him as a poor man, because government doesn't. So our inability to figure out our property rights formulation remains one of the biggest challenges that we have to fix in order for us to rise. The third driver I will give here is entrepreneurial capitalism. You know, the finest moment for any nation has always been when entrepreneurs rise. Nigeria has some of the finest in the world. But the challenge we have is that because the educational system is still a paralysis, they are not prepared for them to execute at the upstream level. You know, in the petroleum sector, they have what they call the downstream and the upstream. The downstream focuses on distribution and marketing, while the upstream is where you are doing the real exploration of crude oil. Nigerian entrepreneurship has to move from the downstream to the upstream. But for you to move from the downstream to the upstream, you need a huge accumulation of capability, which the university system has to give you. Until we can figure how entrepreneurial capitalism will redesign the structure and boost energy in our economic system, it is going to be very difficult for us to advance and drive growth. We are largely a small country economically. Do you know that one company in South Africa can buy every stock in Nigeria Stock Exchange with 30% of its value? Do you know that? I don't want to mention them so that I don't make people feel bad. We think we are big. Yes, we are big because we wear big suits. But I tell you something, one company in South Africa will buy all the stocks in the Nigerian Stock Exchange with 30% of its value. And that is the reality we live, people. That is the reality we live in Nigeria. And we have just accepted this as the new normal. We should understand that we have underperformed. And because we have underperformed, now is the time for us to rise to get to that mountaintop. Entrepreneurial capitalism under full market forces will help Nigeria as a very critical driver. So what are going to be the enablers to help us to get to where we need to be? I would say the first thing we need is aspirational mission. What is the mission of the state government? What is the mission of the local government? What is the mission of the federal government? Where are we as a people going? What is it that they want to galvanize the energies of the Nigerian people for us to achieve? I was still in primary school when a man called Chief Sam Ononakambakwe, the late governor of Imo State, I was still in primary school, just getting into primary school. One day, we were given a piece of paper in primary school. They said, go back to your parents. Tell them that Imo State governor wants to build an airport in Imo State. And every parent must do one thing, must contribute money, give the peoples and give the students so that the governor will have money to build the airport. I remember after a week, my mother gave me 25 kobo. And I took that 25 kobo, I gave it to my teacher. The teacher gave it to the principal sent it to Chief Sam Ononakambakwe, and Imo State Airport was built. He did not visit Washington, D.C. He did not visit Beijing. He tapped the energy of Imo people and said, if you really need an airport, give me the resources to build an airport in Imo State. There used to be a nation where you can tap the energy of your fellow citizens because that man was trusted by his fellow citizens. How many governors today will ask you to send money for them to build an airport? In Nigeria, we call it's a no-go area, right? It's a no-go area. But it happened because this man has an aspirational mission that every person knew that Sam Ononakambakwe wanted to build an airport. And Nigerian people in Imo State made it happen. And that is the reason why they tell me in Aba, they don't have money to fix Aba. I always laugh. Have you been to Abareba? Have you been to Hafia? To see the kind of mansions people that live in Aba are building. Because they don't trust you, they won't give you their money. Because if they have trusted you as their leader, political leader, that money, they will bring it out to build Aba. That is what it is in every part of the world. People willingly pay tax because tax is working in their lives. And as we do that, our nation needs to think about data. We need to have a better mechanism of understanding the processes of governance and how the impact of our policies are affecting every aspect of our country. What is going on in my local government in Abia, in my village in Ovim in Abia State? How can I understand the policies' impacts? Today, we don't really have a mechanism of doing that efficiently. And so what we are really doing most time is guesswork. Government tries this policy, after maybe 4 years, another person tries, because there's no mechanism to improve on any policy. I'm telling you people, you don't rise to the mountaintop by doing a guesswork. You can only rise when there is a procedure for you to measure, improve. That's what they do in engineering. You know, I had the opportunity of working in designing the accelerometer that was using the iPhone. And one of the things we knew that Apple wanted the best possible accelerometer for the iPhone. And to go through that process, you need to go through different evolutions. You see, this thing's not working, you go back to improve it. That is how they do policy. Our data system must improve. And as our data system improves, it is time for Nigeria to scale and institutionalize the Igbo apprentice system in this country. The Igbo apprentice system is the finest business framework in the world. I write in Harvard Business Review. I travel all over the world. I have never seen a business framework that is better than the Igbo apprentice system. Unfortunately, which is very, very unfortunate, the nation that invented it, the nation that tested it with real-life case studies, do not even think it's necessary to scale it. In my village in Ovim in Abia State, we don't have a beggar because it's going to be extremely difficult for you not to have help. A child is not born to the father and the mother. A child is born to the family of communities. Only the communities raise a child. The father are just custodians to bring them into the world. For any reason the father dies, wait for Easter, wait for Christmas. There is an uncle coming home. He says, hey, Uchenna, I have a shop in Aba. Go and get ready. Fellow citizens, it has happened. You know, I was a village boy in the village until they asked me to go to university. And when the time I was leaving village, I was shocked when I came to Owerri. I saw that there was even something like people begging. Because how could it be possible? Because societies have ensured themselves through that mechanism that even if bad things happen, there is always help. But of course, we need to strengthen the Igbo apprentice system, make it extremely more efficient to protect the young boy, to protect the young lady, and also give the person who is taking the risk on them something. Until Nigeria can rise that I am not an Igbo, I am not a Yoruba, I am not an Hausa, I am a Nigerian. Until Nigeria can rise that I am not from the east, I'm not from the west, I'm not from the north, I am from Nigeria. Until Nigeria can rise that I have no southern agenda, I have no northern, I have a Nigerian agenda, we will not rise to the mountaintop. We have a beautiful, awesome nation. I studied in this nation. I went to Futo. And I knew this country gave me the very best it could offer. I always tell people, if you went to Federal University in this nation, Nigeria has already done every deal for you. Your education was subsidized by the Nigerian people. And because your education was subsidized, you don't even have a right to ask government for work. You have to go and figure out how you create work for yourself. I explain it this way. How many of us who have an uncle that paid for his school fees for 5 years, and the day you graduate, you come back to the uncle and say, Uncle, I have just graduated, but you have to give me a job. Does it make sense? Nigeria is that uncle for many of us that went to federal universities. Because when I was in Futo in 1998, I was paying 25 naira for my school fees. I have never seen a more gracious nation than this country. But we don't appreciate it. And that means we need to have a mindset shift. We need to think things differently. Instead of all these paralyses of complaints, we need to understand that any young boy sent to federal university, government is depriving thousands of young people opportunity to go to primary school because they are subsidizing your tertiary education, which is not necessarily critical. So government says, I'm going to sponsor you in UNN, ABU, Zaria, University of Ibadan, and now government will now forget a lot of young people in primary school. Have you ever seen where some kids are studying in primary school? It's because for some of us to have opportunity to go to federal universities. And when we come back, all we do is to think the government also has to feed us. It is our responsibility to now move to help those young people that did not have the opportunity to go to university because government neglected them even at the primary school education that we can give them opportunity to rise. If you go back how nations rose, the time of Rockefeller, the time of Carnegie, institutions of government have not always been the first thing that happened before countries. Most times the private sector pioneer sectors and then government will step in to collect taxes. So by we think in Nigeria everything has to be perfect from government and then we can majestically walk in to start having fun. People, it doesn't work that way. You have to understand that that pioneering aspect of commerce can come from the private sector. Government will now tax you to have more money to regulate you so that you don't destroy yourself, they will tell you. But that is what it is. A group of people in this country established Nollywood. I don't think they wrote any memo asking government for anything. They started Nollywood. And of course, quickly they started, government felt there was some money to be made, and now started asking them for fees, and this is very important. Because government also wants to regulate that sector to make sure that it does not self-destruct. Our private sector needs to understand these constructs. We cannot wait for government. Because no nation has ever done that. Because if you look at it critically, the promises of politicians are taxes of private sector. Because government doesn't have money. Politicians don't have money. And if we don't have the capacity to pay a lot of tax, what do you think they will do? Apple generates $50 billion excess every 3 months. That is, Nigerian budget is about 30 billion. Let me just use. It means every roughly 5 to 6 weeks, Apple has already made a budget. Now, add Apple, add Amazon. I think Amazon hit about 57 billion or 59 3 months ago. Now, please add Walmart, the grandfather of revenue in the world. By the time you calculate the revenue, if you pay 5% VAT on all those American companies, if they are Nigerian, don't you think government will have enough money in this country? All of a sudden, you realize that VAT from 5-7 companies can actually generate more than $50 billion for Nigeria. And we're not talking about the main corporators, we're just talking about the VAT. What am I saying? Until government has the resources, those things you expect to happen will not necessarily happen because government doesn't have the resources. It's a mindset shift we need to have. And that is why when government comes to America, it comes to UK, it wants to hire a Nigerian that is helping maybe a UK city to provide good roads, thinking that when you magically bring him here or her here, she will also do the magic. I always say, what are they thinking about? Don't they know that this guy has tons of money in the budget, while this other guy doesn't have money? So it's not really a question that the people doing the job are not doing it well. It's a question that the resources are extremely so small that the best possible thing they do can never be the best. One university in United States budget is actually more than all the whole budget of the Nigerian university system. And you still want to have the same educational standard in America? It's not going to happen. So that is very, very critical for us as a people to rise, to understand that that leadership is key for us to believe in this awesome nation that great things will happen. And I'm asking for perception demand leadership in our nation. What is this perception demand leadership? In markets, that's what they call the needs of customers, that's what they call the expectation of customers, that's what they call the perception of customers. The needs of customers are things customers need. No, they need. You offer them, they need it, you buy, they pay. That is demand-supply framework. But now, if you focus on the needs of the customer, you're going to run into trouble. Because let's say, for instance, I'm an environmental activist, and you're giving me electricity from coal. You have met my needs, but you have not met my expectation. The day somebody provide me with electricity from renewable energy source like solar, you have met my needs, and you've also met my expectation. But the ground finally of all is perception. Perception is giving customers what they never even imagined they need, but the day they see that, they will say, wow, I have never even imagined, but this is what I have been asking for. There used to be a time in this nation when it was normal that if you travel from Kanu to Lagos, you run out of cash. You have to go back to your bank in Kanu, even though there is another branch of the same bank in front of you. You know what, people? We accepted it. It was normal that you came from Onitsha and you came to Lagos and you ran out of cash, you have to go back to Onitsha to collect money. And the man called Lomaju Goji, a comedian, he would go with his mat because he knew he was going to spend 5 hours in the bank. It was normal. But there was a day, some banks came and said, if you put your money in any branch of our branch, you will have access to that money irrespective of the location of that branch. That is perception demand. And we need to have that construct in the leadership side of our nation. How can we wake up in the morning and we begin to see things that we never even imagined government can do? I give you an example. A corruption system, the way we fight corruption, needs perception demand leadership. We are fighting corruption. You don't fight corruption. What you do is that you actually prevent corruption. I would prefer you prevent corruption than fighting corruption because it's a more efficient means of dealing with this. If you look at the data set from EFCC, about 72% of all corruption cases are related to procurement. 23% are related to the big man factor. The guy is sitting on your shoulder, so you have to do things to make him happy. I don't have a solution to that one. But the one that involves 72%, there is a possibility. Do you know that if you bring 10 young people in this country to write a code, have a database, that any time a DG has approved something before the CBN or whoever pays, it has to go through EFCC. Within 24 hours, you can use artificial intelligence or AI system to just see if that price makes sense. Let me give an example. He has approved a car for 18 million naira. And the system will say somebody bought the same car for 10 million last week. Why is he approving the same car for 50 million? You just pick a phone call and call the DG and say, our system had dictated and flagged this as rate. Can we ask the same man that supplied the car of 10 million to supply you? I mean, and the good news, you also tell him the 8 million remains in your agency's account, so you can also use it for other things. But do you know what we do today? We just ignore that. And now once the man has finished with the 18 million, we now go and arrest him. We now go and start suing him. And now at the end of the day, Nigeria will end up spending 10 million. And what have you gotten? You have not improved the system. And I do believe that if we are very serious in figuring out how to stop this paralysis of corruption, we need to build resilient institutions to corruption. I have a Nigerian professor, Professor Ben Oni, who taught me in the university in the United States. We used to design transformers that are used in the antimatter annihilation system in the space environment. He told me, Andy, if you want to make that system work, it needs to be resilient to the antimatter annihilation process in the space. Why can't we build systems that are resilient to corruption? We don't need to have only angels or saints in Nigeria. There are bad people. We have to make it impossible for them to do corruption because our system will be resilient. It doesn't really need to cost much, but it has to be a data ecosystem that any contract must be archived, scanned, put into a database that whenever a new one comes, we search it. You have to have a format that makes it possible that you can compare Zobo with Zobo, you can compare orange with orange, and that. We cannot be a nation where people just wake up and they drink Zobo, another one will go for Nkwobi, another one will go for Amala, and we are just happy wasting away. We need to think as a people because the world is not waiting for us. What is going to be the contract with Nigeria? What is going to be that moment of execution? People talk about GDP. Yeah, GDP, yeah, fine. But I want measurable, tangible things through that entrepreneurial capitalism. I have something I've called the 1-0 roadmap. Is there a possibility in this country that we can say in the next 15, 20 years, let's have one company that can generate $10 billion in revenue. Let's have 10 companies that can generate $1 billion in revenue each. Let's have 100 companies that can give us $10 million in revenue. Let's have 1,000 companies that can give us $10 million in revenue each. And let's have 100,000 companies that can generate $1 billion in revenue each. And how are we as a nation to drive a roadmap in a very fiercely competitive market-driven economy, how those companies can emerge? If they can arise and come, it means we have an opportunity to move this less than $500 billion economy to $3 trillion economy. Nigeria optimally should be an economy of at least $2 trillion economy. We have the opportunity, we have accumulated capabilities, we have done so many things around the world and locally. Why are we still stuck in this sub 500 billion? It's when we have the right anchors to move us so that when people look through the mountain, they can see that beautiful nation. It's a beautiful country. I see it right at the horizon that we can do great things. And I'll tell you something, how can we make it? Government just needs to understand that you don't have to eat everything today. You can let go with all these taxation issues. Allow people to innovate. I believe we need about $50 to $100 billion injection of right capital. And how are we going to make it? Waive out any tax on dividend to private equity firms and venture capitalists in Nigeria. If you have a fund that has about $50 million and you can invest it in a Nigerian company within 5 years, we're not going to ask you to pay any tax on dividend. And if you're a foreign company, you can repatriate 100% of your profit, provided that you can invest in Nigerian companies. What I'm trying to say here is this. There are market mechanisms that can actually help us to bring efficient capital that can unlock opportunities in this country. From the markets to the territories, there are huge opportunities, but there is no capital. And as we do that, I have looked at what I call the nest oil. The nest oil is not the dumb capital we have from crude oil. That's what they call the smiling curve. It's the kind of curve like this. The edges is where the value, we find the edge at the where, but at the center, the values are very, very small. Money from crude oil is at the edge. Just spend and spend, nothing much. It doesn't add real value per se. But if Nigeria can move for that next oil, we can say the Nigerian military. 25% of your total budget must be spent on SMEs in this country for you to build the capabilities to fight the wars of the 21st century. The Boko Haram war is an opportunity that Nigeria could have created a defense industry in this country. You know what? In November, I went to Dissects to meet the Permanent Secretary of Agriculture. I saw opportunities everywhere. And if you tell me that government will spend 25% of its military budget on SMEs in Nigeria working in the defense sector because we have wars we are fighting in the country, my friends in Bowen, my friends in Lockton Martins, my friends in Raytheon that are Nigerian, all of them will relocate to Maiduguri. They will relocate to Maiduguri because that will be where the opportunities will be. Because they know that the government is going to spend at least $500 million on local companies as they build sensors, IoT devices, software, models, and processes and systems to help us rise under the nation. Agriculture is something I have always admired. The strength of this nation, we cannot really do a lot of things without agriculture. More than 60% of our working population are employed in agriculture. And in our numbers, if you double farm yield by a factor of 2, about 74% you see rising in the school attainment, about nearly 6% growth in the GDP, and we also expecting about 37% reduction in poverty. About less for kids, about 15 years in Nigeria, about 44% of them. So there are so many opportunities in this space. And that's the reason why I started Zembos, my agricultural business where we are bringing precision agriculture in that space. I want to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, fellow citizens. We need to have this mindset with the fierce urgency of now that this country has underperformed across many metrics. Despite whatever we think we are, despite whatever we think we've accomplished, we have more to do. And many of us that are seated here, there are opportunities for us to help all the citizens to rise. It's not just about that I have risen, it's all about let all rise. And how can all rise? It means that growth has to come. It means that growth has to come because when that growth comes, the per capita income begins to grow. This is a beautiful country. It has done many things for many of us. It has given us the opportunity, but it's never perfect. But the best we can do as a people, even at the government level, is to drive that engine of growth. From the lagoons of this beautiful city, Lagos, to the mangrove of Calabar. From the plains of Sokoto to the grassland of Yobe. From the rainforests of Owerri to the plateaus of Jos. Boys and girls, men and women, the old, the young, they believe. They believe that we can rise as a people to give that growth, that bring a hopeful, believable, a nation of abundance. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.